Julius Caesar, the man who laid the foundation for the Roman Empire, with a name so powerful that it was adopted by every Roman emperor and many rulers outside of Rome long after his death. Caesar was that dude. The original people's champ, loved by the millions of Julius Caesar fans around the Roman Republic. But if you somehow have this image of Caesar as an old guy, let me tell you that this dude often fought on the front lines and was once kidnapped by pirates and went more Rambo on them than Rambo ever went on anyone. And also, Caesar was a dog. I mean, that man was a dog. Caesar put the play in Playboy. The man slept with many of his rival senators' wives, and word on the Roman streets was that even men weren't safe from Caesar's appetite.
Dog. He's a straight DAWG.
So let's do a biography on Gaius Julius Caesar, whose great life ended with him being murdered by a man who may or may not have been Caesar's own son. Let's do this. Gaius Julius Caesar was born on July 12th or 13th in 100 BCE. So long ago that back then July was actually called Quintilis, and it was only due to and after Julius Caesar that the month was renamed July in his honor. Caesar was born to a father who went by the same name, Gaius Julius Caesar, I guess now we would say senior, if you will, and his wife, Aurelia. His father was governor and his mother came from a noble family, but the real big dog energy in Caesar's family tree was packed by his aunt Julia and her husband, Caesar's uncle Gaius Marius the Older. And the two of them squared that big dog energy in their marriage and passed it on to their son, who shared his father's name and became known as Gaius Marius the Younger. And Gaius Marius the Younger was the man at the time. Dude was a warrior, badass turned great commander, a real jabroni beating,
pie eating, trailblazing, eyebrow raising, talking is done, you're out of your class, no sleep till Brooklyn, the rock whips you.
He was the people's champ. And at this point in time, the people of the Roman Republic needed a champ because the Republic was failing. Note that this was not the famous Roman Empire ruled by an emperor yet. At the time, it was ruled by two selected consuls and the Roman Senate. But the existing power structure in the Roman Republic favored conservative aristocrats, and their interests, aka money, outweighed the interests of the common folk, and outweighed the interests of the soldiers who conquered the vast lands of the Roman Republic in the first place, but were now cast aside after their service was up, with no pay and no lands. So the people were pissed, and that anger gave rise to the Populares party, previously led by Gaius Marius the Older, Caesar's uncle, but now led by Gaius Marius the Younger, Caesar's cousin, who was dead set on finishing a civil war his father had started against the Roman aristocrats, known as the Optimates party, at the time led by a name called Lucius Cornelius Sulla. A civil war to redistribute the wealth across Rome was about to ensue. A civil war that was an epic clash that shook the Roman Republic and its traditional values to their core. Optimates versus Populares, the aristocracy versus the people. Sulla versus Gaius Marius the Younger, the jabroni beating,
Pie-eating, heart-stomping, elbow-dropping, people's champ.
Yeah, jabroni beating Gaius lost against Sulla and committed suicide in 82 BCE. So that was that. The Populares lost. And for all the members of the Populares, this defeat was pretty bad news, because with Sulla being victorious, he now seized full power and was Dictator of Rome. And the first thing Sulla announced was the Purge. Seriously, all members of the Populares and their supporters were now fair game. No law, you could literally go American History X on them, and you would even be rewarded for it. Enter 19-year-old Gaius Julius Caesar. The young Caesar was a known supporter of the Populares and married to the daughter of a leading member of the Populares party. He was married to Cornelia. So Caesar was high up on the purge list, with half of Rome basically ready to curb stomp him, which is why young Caesar decided to nope the hell out of Rome and enlisted in the military, where he was safe from the purge and where he kind of was the rookie of the year. Turns out the well-educated and well-spoken young Caesar was really good at the soldier thing, and right off the bat, he was a part of successful campaigns in Asia and Cilicia, rose through the ranks, and eventually, in 80 BC, at just 20 years young, a year after enrolling, Caesar was sent on a special mission. His troops were locked in a battle, and to tilt that stalemate in their favor, the general asked Caesar to get the old forgetful king Nicomedes to send the allied fleet of ships he had promised the Romans in support. Caesar was successful in soliciting that allied fleet from the king, but he spent so much time at the king's court that rumor began to spread that he also solicited a different fleet from the old king. If you catch my drift. Actually, I don't know if that drift makes any sense. Solicit a different fleet. Basically, rumor had it that Caesar was the old king's lover, but hey,
Man, everyone's gay once in a while.
so basically, the young soldier Julius Caesar was good at handling all kinds of swords. And while he was out doing all that sword handling, back in Rome, Sulla died in 78 BC. The dictator was dead, which meant that Rome was safe again. And after 3 years away, Julius Caesar returned to Rome that same year, only to find out that while he was gone, Sulla had confiscated all his inheritance, which meant Caesar was broke as hell. But Caesar had one very valuable skill he trained all throughout his life. He was a gifted speaker, well-educated, studied in Greek philosophies, and charming as hell. He had all the tools needed to succeed in Roman politics, which at the time were more of a popularity contest and an eloquence contest, even more so than politics today. So young Caesar got a foot in the door, and things were going okay. So he decided to climb that ladder, further his studies by traveling to Greece, further his philosophy to be better at the public speaking thing. But while he was on a ship in the Aegean Sea, young Julius Caesar was kidnapped by pirates. Cilician pirates kidnapped 25-year-old Julius Caesar in 75 BCE. Of course, as most pirates were, these pirates were just after some booty. Yeah, booty, as in a rich gain or prize. And so they demanded 20 talents for Caesar's release. For reference, 1 talent at a modest conversion rate is at least $100,000 today. And these pirates demanded 20 talents. That's a lot of money. I'll leave it to you in the comments to work out just how much money exactly that is, but just know that at this staggering amount of a ransom money for his release, Caesar said, and this is really true, 20 talents, make it 50. I'm worth more than that. The pirates laughed at this young, confident man, but my man doubled down and showed that he was serious, saying, make it 50 talents, and when you get the money and release me, I will come back and kill all of you. So 50 talents it was, and while they were waiting for the 50 talents for Caesar's release, Caesar used the time on the pirate ship to practice his rhetoric on the pirates. You know, he held speeches for them, recited poetry, threatened to kill them once he's free. The usual things you do when you're a hostage on a pirate ship. Honestly, as far as kidnappings go, not a bad time. Kinda sounds like he was kidnapped by the Straw Hat Pirates equivalent of the time, like not the worst pirate crew to be stuck with. So when these fun pirates finally did get the 50 talents and Caesar was released, he did not forget the good times they had together, so he decided to round up his own crew of sailors, get a boat, set sail, hit the oceans, and hunted down the pirates and had all of them crucified with their throats slit. Now Caesar was a free man again, and a little bit of a legend, because this story of how he hunted down the pirates, I mean, that's epic now, 2,000 years later. How baller do you think that was back then? Caesar was the man. Charming, alright looking, good looking even some say, killer instinct, survivor. My God was getting laid, you know what I mean? Like, come on, that's a story. You tell that at a bar over some drinks, but you getting laid. Sure, he was married, but man, don't forget, Caesar was a
Down!
and all he saw in Rome was a bunch of bones. You know what I mean? So getting into the details of his love life would blow the scope of this video, but just remember that Caesar had many lovers, because this is going to be important later. Unfortunately, free, legendary Caesar, who hunted down the pirates, was not entirely free to roam around Rome as he pleased. He was too skilled of a soldier, so he was recalled into the military to put down an uprising in Asia. And with the crucifixion of a bunch of pirates under his belt, Caesar was even more of a killer than ever before, and he was such a boss on that Asia campaign that he was called to, that when he returned to Rome in 72 BCE after he took care of business, Caesar was appointed military tribune, which means he now had the right to command his own soldiers and run politically. And upon returning to Rome with all these epic stories and accomplishments under his belt, blessed with a silver tongue, man, Caesar was a rising star in the Roman Game of Thrones, and his career took off. But Caesar never forgot his roots. Remember the Populares, the faction of the people formerly led by Caesar's role models, the father and son duo Gaius, Marius, the older, and the younger, standing up for the common folk and the veterans. You remember, right? Just like Gaius, Marius, both of them, Caesar was a true man of the people, a military man that got down and dirty on the battlefield, but could still go toe to toe and beyond with the lofty eloquence of the politicians. Caesar was the man the people needed. Those who felt belittled by the nobility felt seen and represented by Julius Caesar and could relate to him. And I don't want to go into the intricacies of the politics at the time. All you need to know is that Julius Caesar was openly embracing his role as the man of the people and fought for the ideologies of the Populares, which meant good old Julius quickly became an enemy of the state, of the status quo. But still, Caesar had a post in the Senate, could claim military successes. Caesar was building a career in politics, and his wife Cornelia was pregnant with their first child.
His life is good, you know what I mean?
And then his wife Cornelia and the baby died during childbirth. A devastating blow to anyone, and even the great Caesar was no exception to that. He was down and out. And you could argue that even though he was devastated by it, this was the beginning of his greatness. Shortly after his wife died, in 68 BCE, Caesar was called into service again to administrate the Roman territories in Spain, and while there, a grieving Caesar stumbled upon a statue of Alexander the Great, and at the sight of the man who had conquered half the known world at age 32, Caesar, who was also 32 at the time, contemplated his life and his shortcomings, fell to his knees at the feet of the statue and wept, swearing that one day Julius Caesar would be equal to or greater than Alexander the Great. With a new level of ambition unlocked, Caesar finished his job in Spain, subduing a few local tribes who had the audacity to rebel against the Romans because, how dare they be upset that we just come into their lands and take what's theirs and impose taxes, and if they don't pay us taxes after we stole their land, we kill them. Like, how can they be upset? Caesar, do something about it. Caesar handled Rome's business, yet another victorious military campaign under his belt, and returned to Rome with his sights set on becoming Pontifex Maximus. And if you're not a historian, that means absolutely nothing to you other than the fact that it sounds very cool. So let me explain what Pontifex Maximus actually means. It's the top dog chief priest position in the Roman religion, and it had a bunch of duties like regulating the calendar, which was actually a thing back then, or supervising marriage, adoptions, wills, random stuff. But for Caesar, that position would have mostly just been a way to do favors for people in power and earn favors from people in power in return.
You scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours.
Well, Jules, the funny thing about my back is that it's located on my cock.
It would be a stepping stone on his rise to relevance. And so getting that position was important to him. So important that Caesar literally spent his fortune to beat out his competitors to secure the position of Pontifex Maximus. In fact, Caesar didn't just spend all of his fortune, he spent other people's money too. Money he borrowed in return for promises of doing them favors once he is appointed in the future. Caesar used the borrowed money to put on the most lavish election campaign, because reminder, Roman politics were a popularity contest, and Caesar played the game better than anyone. He spent money to put on gladiatorial events for the people, brought in exotic beasts to fight against these gladiators, and all that coupled with his charm, his ability to speak, it won him the election. Easy. In 63 BCE, Caesar was officially appointed Pontifex Maximus. A broke-ass Pontifex Maximus. Seriously in debt. Like, so seriously in debt that it's like, when he hosted parties, bro was replacing the wine in those jugs with the cheap stuff. You know what I mean? We've all been there. Some of us are still there. So, yeah, Caesar was broke. And what do you do when you're broke as hell? You start an OnlyFans account. You align yourself with the richest man in Rome, and that's exactly what Caesar did. That rich man was Marcus Licinius Crassus, and Crassus wanted a couple of those favors Caesar was now able to do for people in his new position as the high priest. Crassus wanted a lot of favors, and then one day,
and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service for me.
In return, Crassus paid off half of Caesar's debt. A perfect marriage of corruption. Of course, other powerful Romans noticed this bromance. Yeah, you like that. Yeah, you like that. You like that. And one of them wanted to get in on the action too. Gaius Pompeius Magnus, or just Pompey. Pompey was a military man, a respected general of serious status, so serious that he was literally nicknamed Pompey the Great. And he didn't really like Caesar's rise to fame all that much, but at the same time he knew that there was no stopping this guy. So Pompey went with the good old keep your enemies closer approach, and also supported Caesar. And Caesar played the same game, marrying his daughter to old Pompey to make that alliance official. Some would say marrying off your only daughter for political gain is wrong. Others say he followed
the pimp manual step by goddamn step.
All of this played right into Caesar's hand, because Caesar was not even remotely satisfied with just being some high priest. My guy was on that Alexander the Great quest. Remember? Caesar had set his sights on becoming the consul of Rome, the highest position as far as ruling went within the Roman Republic. And with the support of the people, Crassus's money, and Pompey's respect, that ambition was not all that ambitious. It was a foregone conclusion. In 59 BCE, Julius Caesar was elected co-consul of Rome alongside a man named Bibulus, who was basically the Robin to Caesar's Batman. If Robin was constantly told to shut the hell up by Batman for a few months until he gives up his spot and leaves Batman to do everything alone. That's what Caesar wanted. He was now the consul, the highest position there was, all thanks to the so-called triumvirate he had formed with Crassus and Pompey, the triangle of power between these three powerful men. And now Rome was as close to being under Caesar's control as ever, and as consul, Caesar was able to lay the foundation of eventually bringing Rome entirely under his control one day. He passed laws without consulting the Senate, laws like giving lands to veterans and other laws that more and more cemented him as the man of the people. Caesar also appointed friends and supporters in political positions and did plenty of favors for Pompey and Crassus, so that anyone who opposed Caesar was automatically opposed by the soldiers Pompey had patrolling the city, and anyone who needed to be bought, well, thanks to Crassus's funding, Caesar had all the money to buy everybody he wanted. And all of this was super illegal, by the way. Like, Caesar broke all the laws as a consul, and while you have immunity as a consul and are literally untouchable, a consulship only lasts for a year. After that, you can and will be tried for your crimes. And Caesar knew that, of course. So him, Pompey, and Crassus, the triumvirate, the three men, they devised a plan. Once his term as consul was up, Caesar would be appointed governor of Gaul, a position that also comes with immunity a little bit outside of Rome, and the plan was that Caesar would govern and campaign in Gaul for 10 years until he is eligible to run for consul again and return. So once his consulship was officially up in 58 BCE, Caesar followed the plan, left on this new military campaign, and again, not just to conquer for Rome, but to line his pockets and to avoid the prosecution he would have 100% faced had he stayed in Rome. So Caesar took 4 legions, which is roughly 40,000 soldiers, and decided that the people of Gaul don't really need their land all that much anyway and were ready to be conquered. How to Get Rich Quick, Gaul edition, by Julius Caesar. First, find the land that is divided and has a lot of kingdoms and tribes fighting against one another. Second, support one of the kings in return for letting you into said lands. 3, join forces and take down the common enemy tribe. 4, threaten the tribe that fought alongside you while they are weak from the battle. 5, force them to now fight for you and feed your army and pay taxes to you. 6, go to the next tribe. 7, rinse and repeat. That's more or less how Caesar took over Gaul, tribe by tribe, region by region, and eventually, after almost 5 years, or just 5 years I should say, Julius Caesar had conquered all of Gaul, governed their land, collected their taxes, which made him stupid rich, And he even managed to invade Britain after he was done with Gaul. Britain, which at the time was an island few Romans had even heard of. But Caesar's military campaigns, they're well documented in many other videos, and that's not what I want to focus on. It will blow the scope of these videos. However, there's one aspect to his military campaigns, to his military side, that's important for you to understand in this video too. Caesar didn't win these battles with superior numbers. He was actually heavily outnumbered all throughout these campaigns. So let's just go into slight detail on one legendary battle to highlight Caesar's military genius and consider this example a very accurate depiction of the military mastermind Caesar was throughout his lifetime. The Battle of Alesia, 52 BCE. After Caesar and his troops conquered Gaul and were busy murdering and thieving in Britain against the will of the inhabitants, one of the Gaul leaders had the audacity to take back his homeland, Vercingetorix. Alright, I guess it's just... I guess there's no dog for the rest of the video. I hope I got your attention. Man, if you turn off now, I am gonna be thoroughly disappointed. And I'm just gonna... I mean, that's the least you can do for the food and the drink anyway. We were somewhere on the Gaul. This is unscripted. I'm not that... Back to the video. One of the Gaul leaders... Let's pull that picture back up. Had the audacity to take back his homeland, Vercingetorix. Vercingetorix united some of the Gaul tribes and led successful attacks against the Roman invaders, which forced Caesar to abandon the British island and return to Gaul to face Vercingetorix in a battle for the future over the Gauls' homeland. But Vercingetorix knew that facing Caesar in a head-on battle would be a deadly mistake, would be suicide. So he retreated from Caesar's troops and scorched the earth on his retreat, making Caesar's troops follow him because he was attacking camp after camp and they needed Caesar and his troops' support. But following through scorched earth meant that Caesar and his troops literally had to march through hell. And in fact, this chase on scorched earth was so hellish that at almost 50 years old, Caesar had to join his troops in the vanguard on the many skirmishes that happened along the way, join them in the vanguard, sword in hand, blood on his armor, battling and all, at over 50 years old, at almost 50 years old, to boost their morale. And it worked, because Caesar's troops made it through the chase, and eventually his legions chased Vercingetorix's army, or rather caught up with them at the city of Alesia, a strategic stronghold that only an idiot would dare to attack once the enemy has taken hold of it. And Caesar is not an idiot. So the Roman army laid siege to the city to starve them out. But that is actually what Vercingetorix wanted, because he had long sent for reinforcements to attack the Romans from behind, pinch them in, overwhelm them, and defeat them. That meant that Caesar could not attack the city, because that would be idiotic, and he could not starve them out. So what did he do? He had his men built a 10-mile fence around the city of Alesia to fence them in and entirely cut them off from supply lines. And then his army built another 14-mile fence around his own troops besieging the city to protect them from the incoming Gaul reinforcement forces. So when these Gaul reinforcements arrived, the Romans fought them from behind their own fence and used choke points to hold off the Gauls, who had superior numbers. And while the battle was in full swing, Caesar sent a cavalry unit around the back to attack the Gauls from behind. And the Gauls actually thought that these cavalry units signaled a whole swarm of Roman legions that were coming to reinforce Caesar and his troops. So they panicked, the Gauls panicked and fled the battlefield, fooled by Caesar's deception. And with his backup gone, Vercingetorix knew his people and the city of Alesia were doomed. So he surrendered to Caesar after a defeat so devastating, to such an epic display of genius, that surrender was forever immortalized in this painting. Caesar was him. If him is being the murderer of 1 million people, because when Caesar arrived in Gaul in 58 BCE, there had been roughly 6 million people living there, and by 50 BCE, 1 million of them had been killed, and another 1 million had been sold into slavery. So just let that sink in for a moment. Still, for Rome, this was a great victory, and word of his conquest of Gaul and defeat of Vercingetorix quickly made it back to the capital where, if there had been internet around at the time, Caesar would have broken it. So in 100 BCE, before Caesar, this was the Roman Republic. And now, in 50 BCE, after Caesar had finished his latest conquest, this was Rome now. The conquering of Gaul, the invasion of Britain, and the defeat and surrender of Vercingetorix were Caesar's magnum opus. And if this story had a happy ending, this would have been the key moment. But there was one problem. While Caesar was gone, Crassus had died while campaigning elsewhere. And with Crassus gone, the triumvirate, the power of three, the balance of three, was no more. And with that balance of power broken, Pompey seized as much control in Rome as he could while Caesar was away, and Pompey lobbied against him. Remember how Caesar would have been up for prosecution for breaking laws as consul, but a lot of the laws he broke was a favor to Pompey? And remember how Pompey, and Crassus agreed that Caesar was to have governorship for 10 years in Gaul so that he could conquer the territories, enrich himself, and then return to run for consul again? Yeah, while Caesar was gone, Pompey turned serious snitch. He told everybody that Caesar had overextended his term as governor of Gaul, that he was conquering on taxpayers' money and sacrificing the lives of Roman soldiers against orders without permission, all for his own greed and excess, and basically Pompey painted Caesar as an enemy of Rome, all while Caesar was gone. Of course, Caesar had supporters in the city, but they were drowned out by Pompey and his supporters, and word around Rome quickly became, Caesar is a traitor. Caesar stole territories from Rome. Caesar is coming to attack us. This was a real Game of Thrones chess move right here from Pompey. I mean, snitch as hell, but well played. Well played, sir, because it ensured that when Caesar returns to Rome, he will be tried, punished, stripped of everything he accumulated on his campaigns, forced to turn it over to Rome, and most likely be executed. So, what was Caesar's response to all of this? He famously said, Alea iacta est. The die is cast. Oh, he was going to come back to Rome, all right? Yeah, with his army, with 10 legions, and that's 100,000 soldiers who had been fighting alongside Caesar for years, who would die for their general that had proven in battle that he would die for them. Caesar was not going to back down from Pompey. He was bringing war to old man Pompey and Rome, except that this war was much more like a Cold War than the previous civil wars that Rome was engulfed in. This war was more of a race against time. Should Caesar and his troops make it to Rome, Pompey would stand no chance. So Pompey ordered legions of troops from the Greek territories to return to Rome ASAP and stand by his side. And should they arrive in Rome before Caesar does, Caesar would not be able to defeat them, certainly not without burning down half of Rome and losing the support of the people in the process. Basically, whoever manages to get to Rome first will be the one to win this race to the throne of Rome. Caesar knew he would not be able to make it in time with his whole army, so what he did was have one legion split off, and he led that legion personally, marched on the double, and on January 10th, 49 BCE, Caesar and his legion famously crossed the Rubicon into Roman territory, an act that symbolizes war against Rome, but also an act that meant that Caesar had beaten Pompey to the punch.
Caesar is in Italy! What can it be? Caesar is in Italy!
So Pompey and his supporters fled the city. Rome belonged to Julius Caesar. Now there was just one more thing standing between Caesar and absolute power. Pompey and his powerful supporters from the Senate were still alive after fleeing the city, and two of those supporters are particularly noteworthy: Marcus Junius Brutus and Marcus Porcius Cato. Remember how I told you that Caesar was a
Down!
Well, one of the many bones that this dog had in his collection was Servilia, the mother of Brutus and the half-sister of Cato. Now, it is still debated to this day whether Servilia had Brutus with another man or if he is the illegitimate child of Caesar, a child he might have had with Servilia in a teenage fling when he was about 14 or 15. Not an unusual age at the time to get someone pregnant, not back in ancient times, but really, we'll never know. All we know is that, due to his relationship with Brutus's mother, Caesar and Brutus were close. But Brutus was also close with his uncle Cato. Brutus was also a man of the Senate, and Brutus was also a supporter of the Republic through and through. So Brutus was highly critical of Caesar seeking power for himself, and highly critical of Caesar representing values that would doom the Republic and effectively turn it into an empire. To simplify, Brutus was against Caesar and stood with Pompey. And when Pompey fled, Brutus and Cato were two of the supporters that fled Rome with him. So before Caesar could enjoy having taken over Rome and rule it, he had to take care of Pompey because he knew he would come back to fight him. That meant that in 49 BCE, shortly after his return, Caesar left his best general and good friend Marcus Antonius, aka Mark Antony, in charge of Rome, while Caesar took his troops to Greece, where he laid the smackdown on Pompey. I mean, to be fair, not easily. They fought twice, and Caesar lost once, but Caesar won the decisive battle so decisively that Pompey fled to Egypt. And what did Caesar do? He chased Pompey to Egypt, and when he finally got there, Pompey had already been beheaded. Head chopped off, and they were like, "Yo, Caesar, hey, here's Pompey's head." But let me rewind a little bit. Why did they do that? And what was going on in Egypt at the time? And the time is 48 BCE, by the way. Egypt was ruled by the Ptolemy dynasty, a dynasty that started when one of Alexander the Great's generals took over Egypt. You might know this dynasty best as the one that Cleopatra belongs to. Man, I swear this video is such a name-dropping video. It's just like Cleopatra, I'm just dropping these big names. Yeah, Cleopatra appears now. And currently though, Cleopatra was in exile, not a queen. Kind of a queen, but a queen in exile. And the one actually in charge of Egypt was her 13-year-old brother, Pharaoh Ptolemy XIII. And when Pompey arrived in Egypt, Pharaoh Puberty XIII wasn't about to show hospitality to a man that was being chased down by Caesar. Even here in Egypt, people knew of the greatness and ruthlessness of Gaius Julius Caesar, and he was not somebody you want barreling down on your country angry. So Pharaoh Puberty XIII had Pompey beheaded. And when Caesar got there, he proudly presented Pompey's severed head to him as a welcoming present. And Caesar was pissed
Shame on the house of Ptolemies for such barbarity. Shame.
You are enemies.
He was a consul of Rome! A consul of Rome.
Caesar was actually chasing Pompey down to tell him that he forgives him and wanted to offer him a position in the Senate. He came to tell him that he had already forgiven all of Pompey's supporters, including Brutus, and also reinstated their position in the Senate. So he was not happy at all that Pompey was dead and was mad at Ptolemy the 13th. And remember how I just said Cleopatra was in exile? Yeah, she was beefing with her brother too. It was a whole weird thing about how her brother was married to her when she was, when he was 11 and she was like 19. It's weird.
How funny you look in Father's chair.
They were beefing. She was exiled, and once exiled, Cleopatra got word from her spies that her brother had started beef with Caesar. Cleopatra had herself smuggled into Caesar's camp, wrapped in a rug. Like, seriously, she wrapped herself in a rug and had that prime delivery sent straight to Caesar's place in Alexandria, Egypt, where when 51-year-old Julius Caesar unrolled the rug, ta-da! Beautiful 21-year-old Cleopatra, ready to do some seducing and scheming. She convinced Caesar to overthrow her brother and install her as pharaoh. A pharaoh that would always be on Rome's side, supply the republic with food, always pay taxes on time, and also a pharaoh that would get sweaty with Caesar. And I'm not just saying that because Egypt is hot. You know what I mean? I say that because they had sex. Man, these jokes are so stupid. Oh. So Simpus Julius Caesar did as Cleopatra asked and casually started a civil war in Egypt in 47 BCE and defeated Ptolemy the 13th's troops at the Battle of the Nile, where once again, despite being over 50 years old, Caesar was not some old man sitting back, but actively a part of the battle. His ship actually capsized in the fight, and Caesar swam to shore during the battle, while Ptolemy the 13th's ship was also sunk during the battle, but he, the pharaoh, drowned at sea. Caesar won. Caesar went to war for Cleopatra and won. So Egypt was hers while she was his. And so Simpus Julius decided to stay in Egypt with the new pharaoh for a couple more months for some loving, and rumors in Rome started to spread. While Caesar was away, Antonius, Mark Antony, and Caesar's other supporters pulled some strings to have Caesar appointed as sole dictator. And now the man they had just elected was in Egypt getting it on with a foreigner? To make it worse, when Caesar did finally return to Rome in 46 BCE, he brought Cleopatra with him?
That is blasphemous!
But it's okay, because Caesar is still a badass who on his way back to Rome casually made a stop at the Bosporan kingdom to defeat King Pharnaces II in 5 hours. A defeat so easy that Caesar then dropped one of the coldest quotes ever. Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Though it should really be I came, I saw, I won. I won at the end, but semantics. So now Caesar was seriously and fully in charge of Rome. And again, if this were to have a happy ending, this would have been the last stop to get on that happy ending train. Remember Pompey's supporters that Caesar forgave? I mentioned 2. There were a couple, there were a lot in fact, but remember Brutus, who may or may not have been the son Caesar had with his old flame Servilia? Yeah, Caesar not only forgave Brutus for siding with Pompey, but during Caesar's battles with Pompey, Julius Caesar went out of his way to ensure that no one would harm Brutus. And now, Brutus was one of the main guys plotting against Caesar. Ungrateful little snitch. Caesar bringing along Cleopatra was the perfect controversy to exaggerate, so Brutus and the other Pompey supporter snitches spread the word that Caesar had a son with Cleopatra and was a traitor to Rome. Rumors that Caesar, of course, denied, but it didn't help that Cleopatra named the son he denied Ptolemy the 15th Caesar, aka nickname Caesarion. Like, girl, read the room. To the Caesar haters, this union with Cleopatra was proof that he was planning to weaken the Roman bloodline and rule over the Egyptian territories. It was proof that Caesar was simply out for total domination for his own ego, his own good. And when Caesar was appointed Dictator perpetual, dictator for life, in 44 BCE, their fears peaked. This was the last straw. Brutus and his kin agreed. Caesar had to be stopped, or what little is left of the Republic would be gone forever, and Rome would serve at the whims of Julius Caesar. So the little ungrateful Pompey supporting traitor snitches and togas decided that Caesar had to die, and they set up a fake meeting, fittingly in the Curia of Pompeii, at the entrance of the theater of Pompeii, where they planned to murder Caesar. And on the morning Gaius Julius Caesar was set to attend that meeting, his wife Calpurnia, by the way, he remarried and had a wife, but you know, on the night of the fateful meeting, Calpurnia had a bad dream and told Caesar not to attend, because she had a feeling that something might happen to him. Supposedly, this is truly what happened. And just as Caesar was about to listen to his wife, guess who convinced him to go and attend the meeting? Brutus. The man whose life Caesar saved, the man he forgave, the man who may or may not have been his firstborn son. Brutus convinced him to attend the meeting, where Caesar was handed a document to inspect before 60 cowards in togas crowded him and assassinated him with 23 stab wounds on March 15th, 44 BCE. And though we will never truly know Caesar's last words, nor if there even were any, Shakespeare famously interpreted them to be et tu, Brute? And with his last breath, Caesar covered his own face with his toga, because he could not bear to stare into the eyes of the man who delivered the final and fatal blow, killing Julius Caesar by stabbing him in the groin. Brutus. As for what happened after Caesar's death, well, all that kind of ties into a new series I'm maybe planning to start, but you'll have to let me know in the comments if you want me to do the following series: Rome's Greatest Emperors.